rivers and lakes and reservoirs are finally starting to move back down into their banks. But there for a week and a half or 2 weeks or so, it was absolutely horrific in most parts of the state, from here in North Texas out to West Texas and then down to the Gulf of Mexico at Houston. The extreme flooding that we've seen here for, the third time, I think, in the last year or so, different parts of the state, especially along the Brazos River, which flows from the Oklahoma border all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, 800 miles long. It was really the center of all the flooding that we've seen here for the last week or so, Tony.
Jim, you mentioned the third time in the last year or two, and this is something that I know both Texas and Missouri have places in which flooding is sort of a regular thing. People remember and they mark the calendar and they say, boy, I remember back 20 years ago or whatever. But we're seeing here, and I'm reading about in Texas, more and more occurrences of this. What is going on? What are people talking about in Texas? I know I write a lot about this, and the experts are talking about climate change, but it's more than that. What's going on in Texas?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to tell, and whether it's deforestation, I don't think that's so much the problem here. We're generally dealing with droughts for the last 7 or 8 years. Texas has been in rather extreme drought condition that has sort of gone away here in the last year or so, but it's expected that the drought condition will come back. So there's really no explanation at all. I mean, it's sort of the cycle that we see here, and now we're into a very wet cycle. This summer, for the last month or so, has been extremely wet with record-setting rainfall all across the state. The problem there at Fort Hood, the sprawling 158,000-acre military post, one of the biggest in the whole world, is that you've got low water crossings that normally aren't low water crossings. That section of Owl Creek where the 2.5-ton vehicle was flipped the other day normally isn't a low water crossing there at Owl Creek. Well, we had so much rain there that the water rose up very quickly and took that vehicle away.
One of the things that we talked about here during our last bout of flooding in January is that there is some development going on in floodplain areas in the St. Louis region that a lot of the experts say there's just stuff that shouldn't be built there, but the developers like it because it's lower cost and they can get their flood insurance. Is there some of that going on in Texas?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's one major problem. And in fact, I bought a house about a year ago that sits right where a floodplain used to be, and the engineers say that they've mitigated those issues. You get beautiful views alongside a lake, and just hope that the engineers are right and you don't have such extreme flooding that you're suddenly losing your home. But yeah, that has been a problem here for some time. Residential developments and commercial developments built in areas that simply haven't flooded before. But when you start getting the kinds of rainfall that we've had in the last month, even those areas that aren't normally underwater end up that way.
Is the weather outlook good now? Is it supposed to be a little bit drier for a while down there?
Yeah, at least for the next week or so, and that will help things to dry out substantially. And most of the creeks that were flooded, and certainly the streets that were flooded around Houston, have now dried out, and that'll help with the investigation that the Army has begun at Fort Hood.
Are they talking yet about dollar figures, Jim, in terms of what it's going to cost to recover from all of the damage?
Not yet, not for that specific set of storms. We've already had, here in North Texas alone, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, over $1 billion, billion with a B, in hail damage for the last 3 months or so. This has been an extreme year of extreme weather. So we've had hailstorms, billion-dollar hailstorms, and now all the flooding that's happening here into the south.
Jim Bryan, ABC News, joining us from Dallas, talking about the flooding in Texas. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Tony.
One